Hello, listeners, and welcome back. Thank you so much for being patient and sticking with me into the new year. I decided to start the year just as we started this channel with just you and me, the listeners, and in that vein, I thought it fitting to do today's episode based on my most frequently asked questions. Every time I get these questions, I beg, why don't you ask this on the channel? And then everybody seems to become shy all of a sudden. So, my way of circumventing that is in this format where we both get what we want. So, without further ado, here are 5 questions with Lana, the educator. So, question number 1.
What inspired you to start this podcast? And how does it aim to address educational challenges in the Caribbean?
Well, I really started my podcast from a desire to just talk about issues I found teachers kept talking about, the topics that were constant sources of conversations with different colleagues. I actually started writing about it on a blog, and then one day a very loyal reader of said blog wasn't able to read it. So I sent it in audio form, and they really liked it and suggested that I find some way to maintain that format. And I tried the podcast, and as you see and as you listen all the way back in season 1, episode 1, this is what it turned out to be. And many of you listening and who have since subscribed were excited for me and really supportive. So I kept it up, and here we are. For the second part of the question, how does it aim to address educational challenges in the Caribbean? Well, this podcast is really committed to shining a spotlight on the unique educational challenges faced in the Caribbean. And all of this while celebrating the region's triumph and innovations. So, by engaging directly with educators and policymakers, with students and thought leaders from the Caribbean, it really aims to uncover those root causes of pressing issues like resource inequity, like learning disparities, and even infrastructure challenges. So, through insightful interviews, I really hope to highlight practical solutions. I want to share success stories from classrooms and explore those approaches that really have worked in similar contexts. I also wanted to provide a platform for collaborative discussions and connecting stakeholders across the region and beyond to just inspire actionable change. The ultimate goal really is to amplify the voices of those making a difference in Caribbean education and to just empower our audience with ideas and strategies that they can implement in their own communities. Let's look at the next question.
Hi, good afternoon. I was wondering, how do you select the topics and the guest features on the show?
Initially, my topics came from real life topics of conversation that I was having with teachers. While they may not have been titled exactly in the way that I do on the podcast, those were the general themes that kept, obviously coming up. So if you listen to my season 1 episodes, you would hear that it's really me giving my thoughts and opinions on those topics, which is really how I stumbled upon what would eventually become the title of the segment, Teachers Have Issues, Yes. The guests initially were chosen because I found that these were people who I found had ideas and opinions that I felt should be heard, many of whom I know personally. After a while, I really became conscious of selecting guests based on their area of expertise or their experience or whether I felt they were someone that audiences could connect with or just had some sort of inspirational journey. And really, I have great admiration and respect for many of the guests who appeared on my podcast, and I will be eternally grateful to them.
What are some of the most pressing issues in education within the Caribbean today?
Well, If you listen to any of my guests, from season one, you and beyond, not season one, but really season two and beyond, you would definitely get your answer to this question. I think they've done an excellent job of highlighting and articulating the pressing issues in education that we face, just not just in the Caribbean, but beyond. As you all would have learned from listening to the podcast, there are many, from equity, infrastructure and resources, teacher training, and even funding. I would go with social issues affecting education, just based on my current experience. There's violence and crime, unsafe environments that disrupt learning, there's school violence, and then there are mental health issues, where we have rising concerns about students' mental health and what we're going to do with the counseling and support services, and even issues with teachers leaving the teaching profession, weakening the local systems.
What advice would you give to educators who want to make a difference on under-resourced schools?
I feel like this sort of touches on the previous question in terms of one of the most pressing issues in education. I'm going to say the first thing that comes to mind, but I know it might seem dismissive and lazy, but work with what you have. Use your passion and creativity to get the job done. Let me think a bit again so that I can sound a bit more maybe professional. This really speaks to my choice of answer for the previous question. Under-resourced schools often just reflect broader societal challenges, but you have the power to instill resilience and hope. So if we teach students, problem-solving skills, encourage them to, seek their dreams, to actually dream, to dream big, and just remind them that their circumstances don't define their potential. I know it sounds like, a pep talk, but if we look at it realistically and we really put action behind these words, then I think we can really make a difference in schools, not even just under-resourced schools.
How do you think parents can better support their children's education in the Caribbean context?
Hmm. All of us really need to understand what it means to be present, to be there for our children, to be there for your children. And I am not just doing lip service here. I am asking you to really think about what that means. Stay actively involved in your children's lives. Show an interest in what they are doing and listen to them. Don't forget to show some affection. If you don't know how to do it, then ask for help. You've heard guests on my channel, like guidance counselors and special educators, talk about what they do. Why not turn to them? This wraps up our Q&A for today. I want to thank you all so much for being, my loyal listeners, and I want to thank you for these fantastic questions. It's been an absolute pleasure to share a bit more about my journey with you. Remember, if you're a first time listener on this channel, I wanted to welcome you. Just to remind you that on this channel, we explore educational trends and tackle pressing issues facing the education sector. I really make an effort to conduct insightful interviews with people making a difference and just share stories of triumph and innovation from classrooms around the globe. If you're interested in all of this, I really invite you to like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And always remember that you empower minds and you ignite curiosity. You have been listening to Lana the Educator.